Councilor Medeiros get settled. I called Pat as I was looking at the agenda. All right, now I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Tiverton Town Council, Saturday, March 21st. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is behind us. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Present.
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 Paull.
Present.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Medeiros is absent.
He's on his way. He also was going to go to the library. All right, so a couple items on the agenda here. First up is discussion and possible vote regarding the proposed charter amendments from the Charter Review Commission. We have that report, and I want to thank, first off, the chair for being understanding and being accommodating, as well as the members of your committee for this meeting, given the snowstorm. So, thank you, sir.
I realize you have control.
Yeah. So, hopefully everybody on the council has taken a look at it. There are certainly some, potentially controversial items, and then also some more easy fixes within the charter that the committee identified. If it would please the council, perhaps we go through and just take them one by one. Where is this? And some of them are interconnected. So, where is my first one here? All right, so first item that was recommended was regarding the annual budget process, and this obviously impacts several different items. Mr. Chair, if you'd like to just give us a quick high-level overview, and then if anybody on the committee has questions, we can address those.
Thank you, Chairman. We gave several options because there was no consensus on what would be the best way forward with this. As it's currently constituted, the Budget Committee does not have a role other than advisory. As in the past, prior to 2022, I believe, they had the ability to put forward the budgets for the municipal side, and the schools put theirs forward. The Budget Committee had the ability to make adjustments as necessary. That was presented to the Town Council, whereupon it was voted and approved or modified as needed. And then it went to the voters. Now there is simply an advisory role. So as you can see in the summary of suggested changes, we proposed to adjust the timeline, and that primarily came as a result of the school's input, in that they had felt it would be better if they had the ability to understand what their budget was going to be for the following fiscal year, so that they could then determine whether they needed to release any teachers, if they had to adjust any personnel issues, or if they had to adjust their budget, which typically, personnel being the majority, that's usually where it came from. So we had proposed a timeline to move it forward and give everybody an opportunity to have their inputs and get it all done by May the 1st, when the schools would then be able to submit their notices of layoffs by June 1st and have time in that month to make their adjustments as necessary. So I don't know if you want to have me go through these individually, or do you want to discuss them as each is brought forward?
Yeah, so I think we start with, and I have a condensed list here, but so effectively, the pros on this would be solving school layoff problems. State aid projections arrive in January, so the data is available, and the departments can plan earlier. So that would be item number one as far as the budget timeline. I don't think that would be impactful, whether we keep the budget committee or not. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a proposal to remove the budget committee entirely. So, Councilor Burke.
I would actually disagree that it would not be impactful, because while the governor's budget comes out in January, the final budget often has changes even to school aid. And I think it would not be wise for us to move it until we have a better picture later in the year. We have a better picture, at least, of what the General Assembly might be proposing after they have their budget hearings, because budget hearings for state agencies don't end usually until sometime in April anyway.
Counselor Janik.
But the school formula is the formula. That doesn't change. So although it does change the numbers a little, I don't think it changes them tremendously. Some of the other items may change.
They're modified by the May Revenue Estimating Conference. That is always held the first or second week in May.
So if I could just pause it, I'm not necessarily opposed to moving the timeline up, but we would have to have some mechanism to account for late budget adjustments from the state.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I don't think this should be changed at all. We really don't know the final school budget until the very end, so I don't agree we should change this timeline at all.
Councilor Perry, Councilor Paull? Okay, sorry.
If I may. just-
Yes.
In our discussions, this was brought forward. We understand that the state technically doesn't produce their budget until June 30th. They have until that time, which, in the case of the schools, puts them in the position of having to guess. And as you know, that we have some very talented and qualified teachers that, with that uncertainty, especially for the younger ones that are going to be the ones that are going to, through the bumping process, be looking for work, they opt out and they leave the district. This is an annual issue that the schools face. They brought that forward as their driving force in looking for this change. So I just wanted to express that as the impetus of this.
Councilor Diamandouros.
I was on the school committee, as everyone knows. You're going to make decisions in May 1st based on a budget you don't know. So if the budget decreases as the months go on, you cannot give the layoff notices anymore. The layoff notices are already gone. So they've already made a decision on the teachers that are going to stay. If they get a huge decrease as time goes on, they can't lay off any more teachers. So in my opinion, it'll impact the students more because programs will have to go and things like that. I think in May, if they make a decision, okay, so, and it's very difficult for anyone to make a decision in May what the schools are going to get if we don't know what the governor's budget is. So if the budget decreases as we go along after May, there's no looking back. You cannot give layoff notices anymore. So then they're in a bit of trouble because what are they going to do at that point? They're going to have to decrease services or supplies or somewhere else. So that's my opinion on that.
I have just a quick question procedurally, because I think this is how the schools have operated in the past, is they typically are going to pink slip more than
A whole bunch of
necessary.
people.
And then, once the budget's finalized, they rescind certain pink slips.
Right, so I don't think this timeline's going to make much of a difference because they're going to pink slip people anyway. And they may say, well, this is what the budget's going to be. This is what the town is giving us. And then all of a sudden, the town council or the budget committee realizes, oh my God, there's a huge decrease in this. So now what do we do?
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it sounds like there isn't consensus to move forward with this item. Is that fair?
Move forward.
Mr.
Councilor Perry?
President, I just have one comment. I don't have the report with me, but I put together a report that I will bring into the, when we do the budget with the school committee. I tracked from 2020 to 2026, the amount of teachers that were displaced. And from 2020 to 2024, 25 actually, there was 0. 2025, which was last year, there were 14. Most of them were teachers' aides, not teachers. So it really doesn't have that much of an impact on what's happening over there. Moving it
We're not
back and
voting
forth.
on any of this.
I mean, we have it, no, well, it's,
I think we should
I think
wait.
the purpose really of this is to give the solicitor some instruction as to what we'd like to see before we take formal votes. Because the solicitor's not just gonna draft up all the language for everything if there's
Right.
not consensus that we wanna move forward with the concept.
I just say
Yes, sorry,
something?
Councilor Janik.
That's all right. So I think that, I understand that a number of teachers get notices, and some of them actually do get laid off, some don't. But there's that uncertainty that I've got this pink slip and I've got an opportunity in another town. And there was a year where they did have to make cuts, and a lot of teachers left who may not necessarily have needed to leave, but we lost some really good talent in town. Teachers who moved out of the district because, I mean, they have to pay their bills too, and they have to, they have to make sure that they have income.
But what happens once the town council finalize the budget and we give them money for all these teachers and the state decreases our aid?
Well,
Then we're kind of obligated at that point.
and I would also say that the other issue would be, let's say there's a windfall from the state out of left field, and now we've apportioned money from the taxpayers that they don't really need to operate. So just from a timeline perspective, I think the more flexibility for the municipal side to finalize the budget is probably better. That's just my take.
And just one more last comment. I know you said just teachers' aides, but they're a very integral part of,
You don't have to tell Dave that.
so that's,
Just to your
it's very critical.
To your point, Councilor Perry, actually, I did the same analysis. So in 23, 24, well, 22, 23, there was 185.4 full-time educators. 23, 24, there was 189.8. 24, 25 was 162.3. That was the decrease. And then the same goes with like total full-time employees. You were down 23.1 in that time period. So I think where they're at now is kind of where they're at. But all right, so it sounds like no consensus on this one. Let's move on to the next item.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to just explain that item 2, 3, and 4 are somewhat intertwined. There are various proposals regarding the Budget Committee and what their role will be. Item 2 references expanding the role, and that the Budget Committee would create and submit the unified budget. They'd also be working throughout the year to engage in financial forecasting and planning for the town as a whole in collaboration with the council and the school committee. And they'll meet at least monthly throughout the year, and more is required, especially when it gets into the budget setting timeline process. Item 3, and I'll just kind of summarize these. It has to do with if your decision is that you don't approve the change and allowing the Budget Committee to do it, that the Budget Committee and the School Committee have the ability to place on the ballot an alternative budget. And as you can read, and I don't need to read to you, it would only affect what changes that are within their purvey. So obviously the Budget Committee on the municipal side, the schools on their side. And item 4 is going back to the system prior to 2022, where the Budget Committee would have the authority to adopting the budget and putting it on the ballot. The town council and the school committee would have the ability to submit an alternate budget.
So I'll just go ahead and speak first. I think that it would be exceptionally dangerous to give the school committee the authority to come out of left field with a alternate budget. While they have the ability to understand what goes into their system, they don't have the ability to generate revenue or account for where revenue comes from. And I think it's this body's job to maintain a positive position, cash flow, right? We looked at years past, this has come up multiple times where the municipality has proposed, or at least we've talked about on the councils, increasing the 3% holdback on the general fund to a higher number. A lot of research stipulates it should probably be 12 to 15%, just in the event that there's some sort of a disaster, so we have the capital on hand. And, I think that reverting back to a system where we have a less deliberative process on the budget, where effectively anybody can put a number out there and say, this is what you're going to go to. It's really just passing the buck. And ultimately, those hard decisions are going to wind up coming back to the council after we've already gone through a significant number of those hard decisions. I would say, I know Councilor Paull has put on something to effectively eliminate the budget committee. We've seen a significant issue with quorum. And I understand that in front of your committee, the discussion was, well, people view this as they have no power, so why would they go ahead and volunteer for it? Back when the budget committee even still did have some power, I was on it. I think you were as well, sir.
Yes.
So it's been one of those committees, I think, that's just been in decline for a significant number of years. As look across the board with all of our committees in this town. It's very hard to drum up volunteers to participate. So at least in my opinion, I would lean towards the side of let's eliminate the budget committee in its current fashion and explore potentially some sort of a hybrid solution where, you have the budget authority from this council delegated to a subcommittee that does contain citizen oversight and review. Councilor Burke.
I would agree with much of what you said, John. I think a lot of thought was put in when we moved to the current budget process that we have. And it's only been in place for a couple of years. I think it's worked well. And I think we need to give it more time to continue to work. As to the budget committee, all of our committees are advisory in nature to the town council. There are some exceptions with like the planning board and zoning by state law, but they're all advisory in nature to the council. So I don't think that is a budget committee that would be advisory, whether it's through the charter or elsewise, is a bad thing. Because the council, regardless of whether it's the budget committee putting something forward, at the end of the day, the taxpayers look to the council and say, this is what you are doing with our money. And why are you doing this? They don't necessarily call the budget committee members or anybody else or even the school committee necessarily. They look at us. So I think as the body that is held responsible for it, this body needs to retain that authority. I'm fine with moving to some type of appointed through the council body that reflects the town residents and also provides opportunities for those who are versed more in budgetary, developing budgets and the like for towns to be on that.
All right, so any other, Councilor Janik?
I actually agree with you, surprisingly, but
Count it.
Almost spit out my coffee.
Hell just froze.
I don't feel that having the school committee, the budget committee, the town council all have the ability to put a budget on a ballot. I just think that the cohesiveness of the committees, it just doesn't, I don't think it's a good look. And it's just more infighting. I do support, because I was on that budget committee before you guys, and we did put that budget forward, I think with Mrs. Driggs too. And I know that that's changed, and I'm fine with that, but I think that having some type of a body, like a financial committee that meets during the year, we do budgeting for such a small portion of the year. I think that some body could look at the finances over the whole year. I think they could do a deeper dive into areas, maybe come up with grant ideas, maybe come up with some ways that we can combine services or whatnot, but suggestions and be advisory to the council. I think that I would be more supportive of that.
So effectively, given the fact that the budget committee is effectively in a defunct state at this point, I think it's fair that we kind of weave in Councilor Paull's ask
I do.
at this time. Councilor DeMears.
When this committee worked on this new budgetary process, I have to tell you, Councilor Burke was a big part of that. Our attorney was. The initial proposal was to get rid of the budget committee. And I think we decided it was too much of a drastic change at that point. And let's have them as an advisory, which they are anyway, and see how it goes. And obviously, the Budget Committee's recommendations the last couple of years has helped us. We've listened to them. But at the end, we're responsible, like Mike said, for how we spend money in the town. And it's true. I get calls all the time about this, and the Budget Committee doesn't, and I don't think the School Committee does. So I just want to say at the beginning, we were like, let's just wait. Too much of a drastic change. Am I right, Mike? Keep the Budget Committee, and let's see how it goes. And we had every intention of going back and looking at the process.
Yeah, you had to convince me, because at that point, I was
Right,
adamant about.
right,
getting
and
rid of
I
the
was
budget
one
committee.
that said, I think this is too much of a change. And if we really want this to go through, let's not be too drastic.
I would also add too that, we're on the heels of the school committee spending $1.25 million more than they were allocated. And the general response from the populace has not been to come out against the school committee in any way, shape, or form. And they violated state law in doing so. So, for us to turn around and hand a body that's proven to be irresponsible with money more power would, I think, be a bad idea.
Hopefully, that's going to change, and I want to say that with the new
Yes.
administration, the new superintendent and the financial director, I think it's more I think they're being more responsible right now. So that was past, but you have to look at the past and think that could always happen again. Do I think it's true right now for who's here? No, but you never know what the future's going to bring.
That's absolutely correct. All right, so,
If I just might
Yes.
advise that as part of our meetings, and the committee put forward these recommendations that were here, but just as a little bit of background, the discussion of a finance committee was held, and there was much support among the members and discussion about how that could be formulated, including adding the treasurer, the administrator, a representative of the schools, having the interested parties as well as some appointed members of the public as the constitution of that board. And then that would meet at a minimum monthly and would monitor the finances throughout the year and provide feedback to you as a body. Because yes, you're right, you are the ones who are going to be the lightning rods if the budget is not met. I just wanted to share that.
And I like that format a lot more, especially having a representative from the school committee, the treasurer, members of the public, because, again, looking to the past, if we had a mechanism like that in place, we'd probably catch the schools before they go to 1.25 million more than they were allowed to spend. So, Councilor DiMedios, then Councilor Burke.
I also think on that committee should be a town council representative
Yes.
also.
Oh,
So-
yes, yes.
Yes, so that person.
If I
can-
wasn't clear, that
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Burke.
And in that light, I think I could support putting an additional duty on the council to require us, whatever the language would be, to establish a finance committee that is composed, but not specifying who, to establish it by ordinance, and also giving due consideration to these types of positions on that finance committee. I could certainly support that.
Okay, so it sounds like we're, just to move things along, it sounds like we're kind of a no on 301 and more of a yes on Councilor Paull's proposal.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't want to preempt it while you guys were discussing that, because we have more to go on with the charter review. So I'll talk a little bit more when we get to that. I was actually, I looked at the agenda item and went back to the text feed and realized that I did in fact agree to the elimination, but it's not what I meant. I meant the second part of that we should have, pretty much what's been discussed now, some type of oversight committee. So that was an error on my part, not catching it before it went on the agenda, but it's no fault of the clerk. But
So, Mr. Solicitor, you got good consensus there? Yes. Okay. All right, let's move this along, because I do have a hard stop at 11.
So Article 4 is the next item that we were looking to propose as a change. That is to change your term, the board, the town council's terms to 4 years, and have it on a 2-year cycle, have a changeover of 4 and 3, so that there was continuity at that 2-year point, instead of the potential for an entirely new board of 7 to come in and, some of you have commented to me, it takes, 6, 9, 12 months to get up to speed on the whole process. So that was the That's our recommendation.
Councilor DiMederos.
I totally agree with this. For someone who's been on as long as I have, sometimes I'm here with the new council and I'm the only one that have been here. And it's very difficult to catch everybody up, and it's no one's fault. There's just so many topics that you need to make decisions on. And sometimes it's only two of us, and that still can, it's very difficult for the people who are new and for the people that have been here. So I totally agree with this.
Councilor Burke, or sorry, Councilor Janik.
I agree with it also, and I think that what potentially happens when we come to the end of 2 years and we could all be here or none of us be here, we are pushing things through that are not fully vetted, or we're holding things that we really should not be holding. So I do agree with this.
So, in the interest of time, I think we probably have consensus unless Councilor Perry would like to say something.
I just have one question. When would this take effect?
If passed, it would be at that time.
At
So
that timeframe?
if you see the wording,
Well,
it says.
I just want to comment on that.
Yeah.
I see what the proposal is. I'm not so sure that, I have to do the research to whether you can, so you're running for office, when you declare for office, you're running for the office in June, for what it is today. My experience is that, and again, I'm going to do the research, but it would not be effective until the 2028 election, because it may have to be that, because in fairness, I don't think, because you don't know if it's going to pass, number one, and you're declaring for office in June, and the office you're declaring for is a 2-year term today.
Okay.
So
Well, I think.
we can look at that.
Yeah, you can take a look at that, use the AI to figure it out or whatever. All right, so it sounds like we have consensus there. So next would be Article 5, Town Administrator.
It was changes to the language for the qualifications, and it was giving the council the ability to establish the qualifications, because, as you know, the charter as written has specific items that must be met, and as time goes on and times change, they may become outdated. This gives the council at the time, reflecting the situation that's currently going on in the town, the state, the country, the ability to make the requirements the new administrator would need to meet.
Councilor Burke.
Did you have discussion about how it is now? Because I do see flexibility in there now, because it does say or equivalent experience and other qualifications as determined by the council. I believe it's important for a position like the administrator to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. So unless they show that they have been a town administrator in another town for 20 years and then they're coming to us. Different story. So I just want to hear the discussion.
This change as presented gives you that ability. You can make the requirement a bachelor's, a master's, you can make it previous town administrator experience. It's giving you the ability to establish the qualifications.
Councilor DiMederos.
I almost think we have that ability now.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I think we have that ability now. We've done it in the past. I mean, the personnel board brings up the applicants with the minimum amount of experience, but the town council hires the town administrator, and we have always looked at what we really need as we're going along. I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Yes.
So I'm just looking at 409, because I think Councilor Burke can remind us, but I think we did make this change last time. I don't know if it was a charter change or, no, it was a charter change. So it says, the town council can adopt by ordinance and amend from time to time in consultation with the town administrator such personnel policies, including those that establish the qualifications required for the hiring of the town administrator and all department heads not inconsistent with the charter, and provide such rules, regulations, and arrangements. So you obviously couldn't have you couldn't say four years of bachelor's degree, right? Because it says 5. You can't. That would be inconsistent. But you could say 5 years plus other experience, financial experience. And I think we put that in there for the flexibility for just what we talked about. And I think we made that for all department heads appointed by the town administrator. So I don't know. Again, it's up to you, but I don't know if this is really necessary. But whatever.
All right, so it sounds like we've got general consensus. We don't really need to move forward with this. Counselor Janik?
I think
as a
I
point.
think we changed the ordinance when we were advertising for DPW director.
Isn't that true? And
And fire chief too,
Yeah.
right?
The only thing I would say, though, is this is as it pertains specifically to the town administrator, and I wouldn't be opposed with eliminating that entire block and just stipulate that, the qualifications. So in the charter, it says, section 502, qualifications. The qualifications for appointment as town administrator are a bachelor's degree with 5 years administrative experience or equivalent experience, and any such other qualifications as determined by the town council pursuant to section 407(9) of this charter, which, the way that I read that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Solicitor, means that the bachelor's degree is effectively mandated, and as we enter a new age where,
Well, it says or equivalent experience, so it's not really mandated. At least, I mean, if you don't have 5 years and you have 7 years or 10 years as a CEO of a big corporation, I think that would count. Like, I just, so that's how it's written. So it's an or, it's not an and.
So, Mr. President, are you thinking that the or goes with the administrative experience as opposed to the degree?
yes.
Yes,
I can see.
yes.
And as the CRC read this, when you refer to experience, that's how we read it as well. The bachelor's stood by itself.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then I would be
So
fine
this
with
maybe more a clarity type of thing, right?
Yes, all right, I get it now.
Yeah.
So rather than, I guess, go up or down at this point, maybe we can ask the solicitor to determine and that the or is for inclusive of the bachelor's degree as opposed to exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, you could put bachelor's degree or equivalent educational experience as determined.
Okay. All right,
The
next.
Yes, the next item, Article 6, is regarding the town treasurer. Our proposal is to make this an appointed position as opposed to elected.
So
The
I'm just
rationale, I think you understand.
going to say very quickly, I think this is a great idea and we should do this.
Agreed.
Yeah, and this is no reflection on our current treasurer, because I don't think we could have had a better one. But
No,
in.
it is a reflection on past.
That's what I was
treasurer
just gonna say. This is a reflection on past experience we've had. So I just want to make it clear that this has nothing to do with our current treasurer. But I think this is a great idea also.
One quick question on this functionally. As it stands now, the treasurer is elected, and therefore, the treasurer maintains their own budget and is not, basically doesn't have to answer to the council. So if we make this an appointed position, we'd have to determine who the treasurer is accountable to, whether that's the administrator directly or the council directly. And then I'm assuming that along with that comes the council having responsibility over the treasurer department budget. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, whether they answer the town administrator or us, we would have responsibility.
I guess my question isn't looking at this change. Who's the appointing authority of the treasurer? Yeah.
We are?
Would this be going through the personnel board also?
I would think so.
I would be more comfortable having it be, I guess the council is the final appointment, but the process going through the personnel board
I think
first.
you would have to.
And then that way you're properly vetting candidates.
So there is language on page 6 of what the Charter Commission provided us about appointment. Is that what you were suggesting?
Oh,
So the process.
That's our proposed language, sorry.
Yeah.
I just had to refresh.
Yep.
It's been a little bit.
Yes,
And by the
it
way,
has.
I appreciate you and the rest of your committee taking time to be here today. That's, very, very admirable.
And thank you for giving us the opportunity, so.
it doesn't
It
say,
doesn't give me the appointing authority, though, so.
and it doesn't say if it goes to the
I
planning
think
board.
somewhere else it did. Oh, above, 407. Town council powers and duties.
Oh, there you
amends
go.
5.
It's been a long time since.
Planning
Oh,
board.
yep, sorry, yep. So you have to, I mean, if that's what the consensus, but you need to make sure we,
All right, sounds
well, I guess
like,
we can move on to you agree that the treasurer should be appointed, when we get to that, we can discuss that.
yeah. And this, by the way, is not the one and only hearing we're going to have on this. We will have a couple more, so. All right, next item is Article 7. We got,
Addressing the Budget Committee and what possibly their role could be, and as we've already had some discussion, this would all be the result of whatever your decisions are regarding them.
Yeah.
okay, 903, fire service.
Yes, they've had volunteer firefighters in the charter, and they no longer have them. The chief had recommended removing this.
All right, that seems pretty straightforward, thank you, sir. Article 8, town officials.
Adding a town planner, and the details of how that would be worked out would
I'm
be
sorry,
similar.
Article 13. Your mic's now off. Oh, okay. Any thoughts on this from the council? I think generally having the planner as a required position is a good thing, in my opinion.
Where would we be putting this? Under 806? No, no.
No, there is no planner stipulated in
No,
the
I'm
charter
just looking
today.
at the similar language for public works and the like. I would just say that we do something similar to what we do for other department heads. So the planning department would be, the head of which would be the town planner, something like that.
Yeah, you get that, Mr. Solicitor?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Article 10.
Is referring to the planning board. This was a recommendation that they had made, Chairman Gerlach, and it's in compliance with a Rhode Island general law, that they have a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. Currently, they only have a chairperson.
I think that's fair.
The second item, I'm sorry, I don't want to run you through this if there's discussion.
Go ahead.
The second item was to include the provision to work with in collaboration. There would be a new subsection to be created for this position, similar. Obviously, that's referring back to the previous item on the town planner.
Ask a question on the planning board, because they do have a chair and a vice chair, but it's just not in the charter, you mean?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. It's not language we have.
Okay.
Zoning board, similar request to add items that are part of the Rhode Island general laws. Changes include streamlining the process for applications, new provisions for special use permits, and enhanced procedures. This would, I believe, ask Mike to, the solicitor, to review and correct, but this was their recommendation, the zoning board chair.
All right, we feel pretty good about moving forward with some zoning board alterations, Mr. Councilor Burke?
My only question for, actually, the one above and this one for Mike is, does it make sense to incorporate statutory changes directly, the language, into our charter, knowing that those statutes could change at a future date? And instead just reference the statute.
Instead of just referencing what, I'm sorry, Mike? I mean, if the statute is, as long as you put words as amended, so that it always would, the charter would be amended automatically every time the statute is amended.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because
you wouldn't have to go back.
they're
Okay.
changing at the state, left and right, so.
Yeah,
No
not-
kidding.
Not necessarily the composition of the boards, that there were changes like 2 or 3 years ago, and the processes and the appeal period, but most of the changes that are coming out now are really have to do with different development plans, but not necessarily the composition or the rules of the quorum requirements and voting requirements of each of the boards. I think we're done with those, I think, but we don't know.
Oh, I wouldn't hold my breath on that, Mike.
All right, so we'll defer to the solicitor to do some research on that, okay? 1007,
It refers to the Personnel Board. There's an appendix, attachment C toward the back, page 13. And it's primarily referring to their roles and the role in the hiring of the town administrator.
on zoning board review, I just gotta get down there.
My one concern with this is that, sorry, Mr. President,
Yes, by all means.
is there may be applicants that we still want to review that the Personnel Board does not forward. And I don't think we should be limited in that regard for this position, because it is the highest position we hire for in the town, that is hired for in the town.
I tend to agree. I think that, you know, for all, the way that I view the structure of the town is the town administrator is effectively the chief executive officer. And on the, you know, public side of the house, you have a board of directors, they select and hire the CEO, and then the CEO is tasked with building their team out. So I think that as a municipal corporation, we should probably take the same tact and leave the council in control of hiring the administrator the way it is. Councilor DiMederos.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Of course, this became a
Yes.
problem last time,
And I think they were looking for
and I
clarity.
kind of caused it, and I'll admit it. Which, you know, I admit when I cause problems. But the only problem I had at the time was, okay, you brought 3 to us, but could we please see the other applicants? Because we might have, because we know what a town administrator really day-to-day process. All I asked was to see the other applicants to see if there was somebody that we might want to look at also. And I think because, like John said, the town administrator is responsible to the town council. And we work with him daily, more than daily sometimes, Patrick will tell you. And I think we know what we're looking for sometimes. And it's not that we want to not interview who they gave us, but there might be a potential that we say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should look at this guy, because some of his experience we see every day we need. And that was the controversy last time. They would not let us look at the other applicants, which I have hired several town administrators, and we've always been allowed to look at the applications. So I think it's not that we are saying to them, no, we don't want to look at these 3, but just let us look at who else applied. That's all that was. So maybe we need to clarify that in the charter, that we are allowed to look at the applicants also, the other applications. That's the only thing. And it wasn't against a certain person they brought to us. It was just, I was curious on who else applied. That's all.
So as I read the actual language proposed here, under the personnel board, do you need to take that, Ms. Mello?
My phone does that too.
So, as I look at the language, it says, you know, the proposed language says the town council is solely responsible for hiring the town administrator and shall review and approve the position's job description before posting and advertising. All applications and submissions for the position of town administrator shall be sent to the personnel board for review, and if determined to be qualified by the board, will be interviewed. After the interviews, the personnel board shall recommend to the town council applicants selected for further review.
Page 13 and 14.
13 and 14. And so, I mean, when I read that language, it effectively clarifies what we put into our governance policy around this. And it doesn't look like it strips any responsibility from the council, unless I'm missing something. Councilor Burke.
I think the only thing it doesn't allow for is what Councilor DiMederos just mentioned, and it also doesn't allow us to pick from the full crop of candidates. So if Deb and I are the 2 recommended to the council, but the rest of you are also in that pool, we, can't necessarily get the rest of your applications, and we can't say, no, Dave Perry's the best one.
So,
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
So, I think when I appeared before the personnel board, I had trouble with this language because it seems to be inconsistent. The town council is solely responsible for hiring the town administrator and shall review and approve the position job description. So solely responsible means solely responsible. Then you flip the page, and then it says, all applications have to be reviewed by the personnel board. It's a policy decision, which way you want to go, voters can approve it, but I just need some clarification. If you're solely responsible for, and again, I took the position last time when the controversy did arise about reviewing that I believe under the current charter, all positions except the town administrator basically have to go through the personnel board. Because you guys are the appointing, because this council is the appointing authority of the town administrator, I believe that you have the sole responsibility and duty to review and do whatever you want outside of the personnel board.
so I'm just gonna flip-flop positions real fast. I would say we wouldn't want to put this forward. Ultimately, I think the governance policy would dictate whether or not we send applicants to the planning board first. but I think as the solicitor stipulates, yeah, so like, the way it looks, the way we do it now, or at least the way our governance policy reads, is that if we're gonna hire for the town administrator, we, as a council, have decided to have the personnel board effectively be our initial screening tool.
By choice.
By choice, but I don't think we should put that as a requirement. That way, I don't wanna like hamstring future councils. Let's say hypothetically, 30 years from now, there are no applicants and the council has to go out and actively recruit somebody, right? I mean,
But Mike, my problem with this is, last time you agreed that we could see the applications, and they didn't give it to us. So I kind of want to fix that somewhere to say that we can at least look at it. Doesn't mean,
I think the appropriate place for that would be the council's governance policy.
Well, I'm wondering if we amend 503, I'm sorry, not 503, I'm looking at the wrong section. And maybe 407, but we do have that. So maybe modify number 5 to clarify our sole responsibility, but that we may seek the assistance of the personnel board, something to that effect.
So I think that the personnel board's issue last time was that people apply in confidence, and it was a confidentiality. They felt that they did not want to let people know who had applied.
Yeah, and
yeah, but it's the town council, and we hold a lot of confidence.
I
Like,
agree.
for God's sakes, you should see what we know. So, well, but that's part of our oath, that we
Yeah.
don't let this kind of stuff out.
No, I understand.
So I think we've kind of reached consensus then that we don't want to move forward with this recommendation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and at some point, at a town council meeting, review this and see how we can fix our governance policy.
Which we should be, that should be like item number
Yeah.
1 on the council's first agenda when the new council's selected. All right,
So,
1101, school committee.
Yep, their recommendations were to omit the word annual because they tie their elections for their officers on a biannual basis. And they haven't been doing it. I don't know if,
But this gives them the opportunity to do it if there's a problem.
do they also, and I don't know the answer to this, but I would imagine there's an opportunity for them to remove an officer or revote if there was a need. This is just their request for some, to take out this requirement that they're not following.
There's language in ours that maybe just to mirror. Council shall elect from among its members a president and vice president, each of whom shall serve at the pleasure of the council. So maybe just mirror that language
Yeah.
for the school committee.
I mean, I think the problem is the staggered terms, and so I think switching it from annually to every 2 years to line up with the election, that gives the incoming, elected school committee the ability to select who they want their chair to be for 2 years.
Right.
Like this year, for example.
And by the way, I think if anything, we should be mirroring that language if and when the staggered terms happens for the council.
Yes, I would disagree. I don't think you need a limit. I think it's really that body's decision. If they're not happy with whomever is in that position, they should at any point be able to change their mind. And by limiting it to specifying a set time frame, I'm not sure that allows that flexibility.
Okay. Does that function, Mr. Solicitor? That's why I looked at you.
I'm just a scrivener. I mean, annual elections, biannual election, I get it. I mean, generally, unless it's in the charter, it's my position that a body can remove its officers at any time.
Okay.
By majority vote. So.
All right, so I guess that would be the direction, what Councilor Burke proposed. And then as far as the requirement that minutes shall be on file with the office of the town clerk, I don't necessarily know that I support removing that requirement. I mean, I get it that everything's available on the Secretary of State's website, but we still have members of the community that don't, maybe not have access to a computer or know how to use it. So I could see this being a point in, 30 years, but maybe not.
And really, it's an email.
Yeah. As long as they're, submitting their, CCing the clerk when they submit their minutes, I don't think that should be that big of a lift.
Do we get these now, Joan?
Sporadically.
So I would be in favor of keeping that requirement.
What's interesting too, is you said sporadically. I think by keeping it the way it is, that also, and I don't know if you chase them down, but it also kind of holds with accountability as well. You're receiving them sporadically, and some aren't being submitted.
So, as you know, our council minutes are available online, and they're searchable.
Mm-hmm.
The school committee minutes are not searchable. If they're only at the Secretary of State's website, then you have to search through each and every one to
Yeah.
find what you're looking for. So my aim was to get them to my office so that we could make them searchable.
Yeah, more transparency.
Yeah,
Correct.
I like it. All right, next one's section 301, budget adoption process. I think the direction that we're looking at going is probably, yes, modify this, but modify it in
This is backup.
a material different way. Okay, sorry, my
This
apologies.
is, that's quite all right.
All right, so that effectively covers all the recommendations we received from the Charter
That's
Review
correct.
Commission. I want to thank you all very much for being here, and I do appreciate your time, energy, and effort spent into reviewing the charter. It is necessary and important to do on a periodic basis, so thank you all.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda then is a couple council proposals. So first up,
Can we go back for a second?
yes, sir.
So on the treasurer, let's go back to the town treasurer. So we have consensus of who's going to be the appointing authority for the treasurer? So
Oh,
if we go to page 602,
I mean, it's effectively the CFO for the town. I wouldn't be opposed to that being the council that,
Yeah, I
Holds
think
the appointment
council
process.
should do. Or be just like the town administrator,
yeah.
someone that.
I'll offer some of the insight that we had on our discussions. We had similar discussions as to how they're going to report. And the discussions included that there would be a dotted line between the administrator for day-to-day reporting and submissions, the council as oversight and overseer. So you're the body that is going to have to establish what that reporting structure is, but on a day-to-day basis, the administrator sees the treasurer and is the person who she is bringing budgets to and discussing the finances with. Our thinking was that it made sense that she would be reporting to him with a dotted line to the council. And how that is structured is
Yeah,
in your hands.
I'm in agreement with that. The board of directors typically on the public company side is responsibility for hiring the CFO.
At the C level gets to
Yeah,
that.
I think this effectively C-suite
Yeah.
should be appointed by the council. And then that leaves only one position that we wouldn't appoint. But we'll talk about that.
I think that's on
It's not.
No, that wasn't part of our charge.
All right, good with that, Mr. Solicitor?
Did we decide on the planner too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Town planner should be hired by the administrator
yeah,
as a department that rolls up under the admin.
agreed. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So I know the solicitor and I know it was part of the discussions in the past about having the planner also be in charge of the zoning department and the building department as well. So if the council is agreeable to have the solicitor research, kind of doing a department head with a department head. So I would work with the planner, but the building official, the zoning official, and all of those employees would fall under the planner.
Makes sense. So we'll make sure we put that on for, does that structure need to be built into the charter, Mr. Solicitor?
Building official stands alone.
I think we should make a department of economic development or planning, whatever, and then in that, make the head of that the planner, and then all these other officials are in that department building official is correct, well, it stands alone, but make the planner the coordinator for that.
Bizarre.
Yeah, for
All right,
that
so
office.
we'll, at a future meeting, when we discuss this, we'll have on the agenda, I guess, like structure, basically. What does the structure look like? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is Councilor Paull, elimination of the Budget Committee and/or establishment of a Budget Advisory Committee. Councilor Paull.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as I said earlier with my preface there, I think we should probably look at this as starting with the and/or portion, establishment of a budget advisory committee, and have a discussion on what we feel that would look like. We kind of touched on it already, and I think that's actually heading in the right direction of having the administrator, the treasurer, maybe the school CFO, a committee that meets monthly to review this, but also have citizens on it as well. So if anybody wants to take it off from there and maybe propose something, or
Councilor DiMederos.
So it would be the elimination of the budget committee, which would be on the voting list. But then I think the financial committee part of it, Mike Burke had.
I agree.
It would be like more of an ordinance or a resolution or whatever it is.
Yeah, it would effectively be adding a position, adding an item to the council's responsibility to draft and maintain a standing finance committee, composition of which is dependent upon the ordinance that the council passes. That's what you were intending, right, Councilor Burke? Okay. How do we feel about that as a council? Yes?
I have no
Okay.
issue. Like I said, my intent was not part one there, but because there was talk of it, I looked at my text quickly and said, yep, sure. So,
I like
not
it.
your fault, my fault.
I like it. All right, so moving along, Councilor Perry, Planning Board member size reduction from 9 to 7. Councilor Perry.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Edwards. And I've spoken to most of the councilors about this reduction from a 9-member board to a 7-member board. I've also spoken to previous chair of the planning board, Mr. Gerlach, and he was in agreement with this. I spoke to the planner, Chris Spencer. He was in agreement with this. And haven't had a chance to speak to the new chair of the planning board. But I think Mrs. Janik spoke to her, and I think she was in agreement, I hope. So I think what we need on the planning board is people who are really in tune to what's going on with planning in this town. People who understand and can read a map, people who can read a plan, and not just people who are on the planning board that are just there to take a vote. So I think by reducing the size to a 7-member board, we can get qualified, hopefully, some qualified people on that planning board. It's a very, very important job for this town. It's probably the most important position that you could have in this town right now with everything that's going on. And I think we need some really qualified people in those positions. So I hope we can get this through and get that planning board where it should be.
Councilor Janik? You had asked planning chair to.
I'm asking the planning chair.
Yes, but please, I think your input would be very valuable here in this discussion.
I am not in disagreement from going from 9 to 7 positions. I would just ask that we increase the qualifications for new planning board members. I'd like to work with the town administrator and our town planner on that, and with the council. I think we really need to increase our expectations, and make sure we're getting the best candidates, whether we have 9 or 7. But especially if we're decreasing it, we have more development than ever facing our board. And we need people that we can count on to be there, to research the material ahead of time and be able to absorb it and ask intelligent questions.
Can I proffer this, Mr. Solicitor, if it's within lines of the agenda item? Similar to what we did with the qualifications by ordinance, could we do that here and add that language that the council shall set by ordinance minimum qualifications or preferred qualifications?
and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. Remember, however, you are the appointing authority. So if you have people who you do not believe are qualified to sit on the planning board, you have the authority to not vote them on the planning board. So I get a little nervous when we start putting qualifications down there because qualifications may change over time. You know, so I mean, you can do what you want, but
I would say that you set those preferred qualifications by ordinance, so that way it's easier to amend in
change,
the
yeah,
future.
yeah.
And then,
because once it's in the charter
And
forever
then
until it's
I'm
changed.
just asking for basic things.
Right,
You
like,
know,
I get it,
this
like-
isn't anything extraordinary.
Right.
This
I
is
get
just
it.
basic, and I'd like it to be on the planning board section so that when they apply for a position, they can tell us if they have these requirements.
Councilor DiMederos.
Maybe we could also, once we get applications for the planning board, the initial process would be you, the town administrator, and the planner look over these applications and then come to us with a recommendation. That would be helpful to us too, because we don't know what you really need. And like Mike says, it changes all the time. So once we get these applications for the planning board, Joan forwards them to you, the planner, and the town administrator, and you all meet and then give us some kind of opinion on who you think should get the position. What does everybody think about that?
Yes.
Mr. President.
I do
Yes.
like that.
Cheryl, isn't there are courses that are offered through the state, correct?
That are offered, yes.
Yes. And they can take these courses it's an online
Yes.
course.
But there are some things that people should know coming in.
Yeah, but I mean, once.
yes, they can-
Once they have these qualifications that we need, and I don't know if we can require them to go online. I think there is, you have to go once a year. It's
Right,
the mandatory ones. I remember when I was on the,
right, from state planning.
So I think the administrator would like to step in here.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. To Councilor DiMederos' point, she's spot on. We want to start doing that. I know I had a brief conversation with the chair of the planning board and the planner. So this way, and as you know, with your policy, when individuals and citizens come before you, we want a letter of intent. We'd like to have a resume. So this way there's backup and we can vet these candidates. And that is in no way to disenfranchise citizens from stepping up and serving. It's more so just given the complexities of these boards that have quasi, somewhat judicial and policymaking authority, we want to make sure that we're getting people who know what they're getting into before they get into it. And so we can make a recommendation to you so we can have a professional board that is going to be able to lead the planning challenges that we are facing right now and into the future.
Yeah, the other thing I would add too is that one of the items that I had identified was right now we're looking at, between all of our boards and commissions, like over 80 volunteers that we need to marshal when we're a town of 16,000. So that does create an issue as far as getting volunteers and interests, and maybe at a future meeting we could talk about, potentially eliminating some redundant committees. But, going from 9 to 7, I think, is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Councilor Janik.
So Cheryl, I know you have a workshop coming up
Tuesday night.
next week, and I know that's part of what you want to talk about, expectations, and definitely planning board is, people think it's once a month, but it's really way more than that. The backup that the planning board gets it's bigger than the council's backup, and everything is so detailed, and we really need people to understand that when they go on. Understandably, people have left because of work changes, life changes, and that, I get that, but people need to really understand when they go on what is expected, because we have way more going on than can fit on a plate.
And for the foreseeable future, it's going to be more than once a month position. It's going to require additional meetings, it's going to require additional workshops, additional education, and we just have to make that known to new applicants.
And not to mention, getting together with the council just on our own workshop with some of the changes has been a challenge. So, all right, I think we've got consensus that 9 to 7's a yes. Last item is discussion and possible vote to instruct the solicitor to prepare necessary documents and drafts for the selected charter amendments discussed in sections 4A and 4B. Councilor Burke.
So just a question. My understanding was today was primarily to look at the Charter Commission recommendations, and I know, for example, the EDC has,
Yes.
has some suggestions. Will we have another opportunity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would think between now and the time this is finalized, we have at least 2 more discussions, whether that's a standalone workshop or a, agenda item if we have a light council agenda. And yes, I am aware that the EDC does have some suggestions, and so I had asked the EDC chair to put together some stuff so we can get it on, either on an agenda or have a separate workshop with other recommended changes from this body.
All right, thanks.
Joan, when do we actually need to finalize this?
Well, you need to have a public hearing, vote on it, so you need to continue your public hearing. But the drop dead date is the beginning of August.
Okay. Thank you.
So we also have the Board of Canvassers in there that need to certify the ballot questions, so you're backed up to at least May.
Hooray, so we get a month. Wonderful.
All right.
So, in that instance, I'd like to ask for a vote to instruct the solicitor to prepare the documents and drafts for the amendments that we had come to consensus
So
on.
moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, we do have an item on here for public comments. I don't know why it falls after this. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
For the cameras at home, there's 60 people in the room.
The crowds are huge.
Yes, yes.
All right, in that case, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Do I have a second? Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.